You already know the thing you keep avoiding. It is not loud. It does not chase you through the day. It waits until the noise fades, until the room gets still enough for your own mind to speak. Then it returns. The message you did not answer. The boundary you swallowed. The routine you keep promising to repair. The truth you keep dressing up as not the right time. And the strange part is, you are not avoiding it because you are weak. You are avoiding it because for a few hours, silence feels easier than honesty. Delay feels softer than decision. Distraction feels almost like peace. But what if the pain you keep postponing is not leaving at all? What if it is only learning your schedule, waiting for the moment you finally run out of places to hide? You know the pain is still there because even in your quietest moments, it finds a way to breathe. It comes when the room goes silent. When your phone lights up and you already know whose name you were hoping not to see. When you read the message, close it, and tell yourself you will answer later. Not because you do not care, but because one more honest conversation feels heavier than you can carry today. So you wait. You wait for the right mood, the right time, the right version of yourself. You say tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow you will explain yourself properly. Tomorrow you will finally admit what has been bothering you. Tomorrow you will stop pretending the relationship is fine. Stop staying in the same routine. Stop acting like your peace is real when it is only silence covering pressure. And for a little while, avoidance feels merciful. It gives your body a break. It lets your chest loosen. It lets you get through dinner, get through work, get through another evening without opening the place inside you that already feels bruised. You come home tired, sit down, check your phone again, and choose distraction because you cannot face another emotional bill tonight. You scroll, you laugh at something you barely find funny, you tell yourself you are resting. But deep down, you know the difference between rest and escape. Rest makes you return clearer, escape makes you return smaller. That is the part you do not say out loud. The things you avoid do not stay the same size. They start entering the way you speak. They make you careful when you should be honest. They make you over-explain simple things. They make you apologize for feelings you have not even expressed yet. They make you stay quiet in rooms where your whole body is asking you to tell the truth. And still, you are not weak for doing this. You have been tired. You have been ashamed. You have been afraid of what might happen if you finally admit the truth. Maybe you were afraid someone would leave. Maybe you were afraid they would stay, but nothing would change. Maybe you were afraid that once you spoke honestly, you would no longer be able to keep living the same way. That is a frightening thing to realize, because sometimes the pain you postpone is not only about another person. Sometimes it is about the life you keep negotiating with, the job you keep tolerating, the habit you keep excusing, the version of yourself you keep defending, even though you no longer respect the choices that built it. You keep saying you need more time, but time has been passing, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly through missed mornings, broken routines, small promises you made to yourself and abandoned before anyone noticed. And maybe that is why this hurts so much. Nobody had to accuse you. Nobody had to point it out. You already knew. You knew in the pause before replying. You knew in the heaviness before sleep. You knew in the moment you said, "It is fine," and felt something inside you step backward. There comes a point where avoiding pain no longer protects you. It starts training you. It teaches you to lower your voice around your own truth. It teaches you to choose temporary calm over lasting self-respect. It teaches you to call discomfort danger, even when discomfort is only asking you to wake up. And this is where something begins to shift. Not because you suddenly become fearless, not because the pain disappears, but because you stop mistaking delay for safety. You start seeing that the thing you refuse to face is not waiting politely in the corner. It is making decisions for you. It is shaping your mood, your energy, your relationships, your discipline, your confidence. The pain you keep postponing does not leave. It learns your schedule. It knows when you are alone. It knows when the noise fades. It knows how to return through a song, a message, a memory, a quiet hour after midnight when there is nothing left to distract you. And maybe the first act of strength is not fixing everything tonight. Maybe it is simply admitting without blaming yourself that what you keep avoiding has begun to lead you. That is the moment a person starts to change. Not when they feel ready, when they finally understand that delayed pain does not disappear. It gathers authority, and sooner or later, you either face it with your own hands, or you live under its command. Comfort does not always arrive softly. Sometimes it arrives like a quiet agreement you make with yourself when you are too tired to fight one more honest thought. You tell yourself you just need a break, just one night without thinking. One more hour of scrolling. One more day before you answer the message. Set the boundary. Admit what has been sitting in your chest like a weight you keep pretending is normal. And in that moment, it feels reasonable. It feels almost kind. You are exhausted, and comfort offers you a chair. So you sit. You let the conversation wait. You let the routine stay broken. You let the room remain messy, the goal remain untouched, the money remain uncounted, the body remain untrained, the truth remain unsaid. Not because you are careless, not because you do not know better, but because some part of you has learned that discomfort feels like danger and immediate relief feels like survival. That is the bargain. Today, you get silence. Tomorrow, you inherit the same problem with more shame attached to it. Today, you avoid the conversation. Tomorrow, the distance feels harder to cross. Today, you numb yourself so you do not have to feel the disappointment. Tomorrow, you wake up with the same life, only now you trust yourself a little less. And nobody sees that transaction. From the outside, it looks ordinary. You are just resting. You are just busy. You are just not in the mood. You are just keeping the peace. But deep inside, you know when peace is real, and when it is only fear wearing softer clothes. Real peace leaves you with more dignity. Avoidance leaves you with more explaining to do. Your brain is not trying to destroy you when it chooses comfort. It is trying to protect you from threat. It remembers what happened when you were honest and someone punished you with silence. It remembers the argument that went too far. It remembers being misunderstood after you finally found the words. So now, when a hard truth appears, your body reacts before your wisdom can speak. It says, not now. It says, later. It says, let us survive this feeling first. And sometimes that response did help you survive. But survival patterns become prisons when you keep using them in a life that is asking you to grow. Comfort becomes a small room. At first, it feels safe because the walls are close and familiar. Nothing can surprise you there. No one can reject what you never reveal. No one can criticize the effort you never make. No one can abandon the boundary you never set. So you return to that room again and again, convincing yourself it is peace because it is quiet. But the room keeps shrinking. One day you notice you do not speak honestly anymore. You hint, you adjust, you swallow words. You laugh when something hurts, you say it is fine, because explaining the wound feels more painful than carrying it. You stop making promises to yourself because breaking them has become too familiar. You stop starting because starting would expose how long you have waited. That is when comfort begins to cost more than pain. Because pain, when faced, has an ending. It may be messy, it may shake your voice, it may force you to lose an illusion you were attached to. But at least it moves. Comfort, when used to hide from truth, does not move. It keeps you in place and charges you quietly. The payment is not dramatic at first. It is the way you hesitate before trusting your own decision. It is the way you need distraction the moment silence appears. It is the way you feel tired before the day has truly begun because some part of you has been carrying unfinished truths all night. And maybe this is the moment you stop calling every soft place safe. Maybe you begin to understand that rest should restore you, not erase you. Peace should make you more honest, not more afraid. Comfort should be a place you visit, not a life you surrender to. Because the more you trade truth for temporary relief, the more self-trust you spend. And one day, the pain is not only what happened to you, it is realizing how long you kept choosing the smaller room because it asked nothing from you, while the life waiting outside kept asking for your honesty. Regret does not usually break the door down. It sits beside you in small moments, speaking so quietly that you can pretend you did not hear it. You know that voice. It comes when you are about to say yes, even though your body has already said no. It comes when you keep checking your phone for someone who has made you feel uncertain for too long. It comes when you tell yourself the routine is not that bad, the habit is not that serious, the disrespect was not worth addressing. The exhaustion is just part of life. And because nothing explodes, you move on. That is how it begins. Not with one dramatic collapse. Not with one terrible decision that ruins everything at once. It begins with the small private warning you keep pushing away because listening to it would require you to change something before you feel ready. You feel it when you stay in a place that has been shrinking you. You feel it when you laugh off something that actually embarrassed you. You feel it when you delay taking care of your body, telling yourself you will train next week, eat better next month, sleep earlier when life calms down. You feel it when your own standards tap you on the shoulder, and you answer with excuses because excuses are easier to carry than responsibility in the moment. But every time you ignore that signal, something inside you learns not to speak so clearly. That is the quiet damage. Your inner voice does not disappear all at once. It gets tired. It gets softer. It starts giving you warnings in smaller ways because you have taught it that honesty will be postponed. You tell yourself you are being patient. You tell yourself you are keeping peace. You tell yourself you are waiting for the right time. But sometimes waiting is just fear, dressed in acceptable language. And you know it because the same thought keeps returning. It returns in the shower. It returns when you are driving alone. It returns when the house is quiet and there is no one left to impress. It does not shout. It simply asks the question you have been avoiding. How long are you going to keep living against what you already know? That question is uncomfortable because it removes the drama. It does not let you blame confusion forever. It shows you that some parts of your life are not unclear. They are just inconvenient to admit. You already know which conversation needs honesty. You already know which habit is costing you confidence. You already know which environment makes you smaller when you leave it than when you entered. You already know where your time is leaking. You already know when you are betraying your own standard just to avoid tension. And still, this does not make you bad. It makes you human. You got tired. You wanted relief. You wanted 1 week without pressure. You wanted someone else to understand without you having to explain everything again. You wanted the pain to resolve itself quietly so you would not have to be the person who changes the temperature of the room. But future regret has a cruel memory. It remembers every moment you were warned. It remembers the nights you felt the truth in your chest and chose distraction. It remembers the mornings you promised yourself you would start and then negotiated your way out of it before the day had even begun. It remembers the boundary you almost set, the apology you almost stopped giving, the decision you almost made when your self-respect was still close enough to reach. And one day, if you keep delaying, you will not only grieve what happened, you will grieve the fact that you saw it coming. That is the part people do not talk about. The deepest regret is not always the pain itself. Pain can teach you. Pain can clean the wound when you finally stop covering it. But the slow loss of self-respect is different. That loss comes from knowing you abandoned your own signal again and again until your life started reflecting your silence. So maybe the first change is simple, but not easy. You stop dismissing the whisper. You stop treating your own discomfort like an interruption. You stop calling your standards too sensitive just because they ask for courage. You begin to listen when something inside you tightens, not with panic, but with respect. Because the future version of you is already watching this moment. And what they will remember is not whether you were afraid. They will remember whether you kept ignoring the voice that was trying to bring you back to yourself. You keep thinking there will be a morning where everything inside you finally lines up. You will wake up with a clear mind. Your chest will feel lighter. Your fear will be quiet. Your energy will return. The decision will feel obvious. The words will come perfectly. And the version of you that has been hiding underneath all this exhaustion will finally step forward without shaking. But that morning keeps moving. You wait for the right emotional weather. You wait until life feels less heavy. You wait until the pressure at home settles, until the messages stop pulling at you, until your routine is fixed, until you feel strong enough to make the change without hurting, doubting, explaining, or disappointing anyone. And because waiting sounds mature, you do not question it at first. You call it patience. You call it planning. You call it healing. You tell yourself you are being careful, not afraid. You say you are choosing the right timing, when deep down you know timing has become the place where your courage goes to sleep. That is hard to admit, because you are not lazy, you are not empty. You are not someone who does not care about their life. You care so much that the wrong move feels terrifying. You have imagined the conversation going badly. You have imagined being misunderstood. You have imagined starting again and failing where someone can see it. So instead of moving, you stay in preparation. You keep adjusting the plan, thinking about the plan, talking around the plan, but never letting your life feel the weight of your decision. And while you wait, something quiet happens. Your world gets smaller without asking permission. The standard you once had becomes negotiable. The promise you made to yourself becomes a sentence you are tired of repeating. The relationship you should have clarified becomes a fog you learn to live inside. The body you meant to train becomes another uncomfortable thought you avoid after a long day. You still recognize yourself, but less sharply, like a picture losing focus one small blur at a time. Months pass like that. Not as a disaster, that would almost be easier to confront. Instead, they pass through ordinary days, coming home tired, eating something without tasting it, checking your phone without knowing what you are looking for, saying tomorrow with a voice that no longer fully believes you, carrying the same problem into a new week, then a new month, then a new mood, as if changing the lighting around the pain will somehow change what it is asking from you. But the problem remains. It follows you into better days too. That is what makes it so heavy. Even when you laugh, even when the room is calm, even when nothing is visibly wrong, some part of you knows there is a door you keep walking past. And every time you pass it, you lose a little more trust in your own willingness to enter. At some point, waiting stops being neutral. It becomes a decision. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Every delay teaches your life what you are willing to tolerate. Every postponed boundary tells your nervous system that fear gets the final vote. Every private promise you abandon makes the next promise harder to believe. And slowly, you do not just lose time. You lose the feeling that your own word means something. That is the pain underneath all the planning. You are not only waiting to feel ready, you are waiting to become someone who no longer has to feel the discomfort of choosing. But that person does not arrive through silence. They arrive through the first imperfect act, the awkward conversation. The early morning you do not feel like keeping. The money you save instead of spending to soothe yourself. The quiet decision to stop explaining your standards to people who benefit from your confusion. You do not become ready and then move. You move, and something in you starts becoming ready. Not all at once, not beautifully, but honestly, you take one step, and your mind learns that fear can be present without being in charge. You take another, and your self-respect hears you speaking again. You stop waiting for a clean beginning and start building a real one from the middle of the mess. And maybe that is where your life begins to return. Not when you feel fearless, when you finally understand that the life you are waiting for has been waiting on your first honest move. The first honest cut feels sharp, because it takes away the story you have been using to survive. It removes the soft lie that things are fine. It interrupts the quiet performance. It makes you stand in front of what you already knew, without the protection of maybe later, maybe tomorrow, maybe when I am stronger. And that is why facing the truth can feel cruel at first. Not because the truth is trying to hurt you, but because it refuses to keep decorating the wound. You know the moment. It is the message you finally answer without shrinking your words. The conversation where your voice is not perfectly steady, but it is honest. The boundary you set even though your hands feel cold. The apology you give without trying to protect your pride. The decision to leave a place that taught you to doubt your own needs. The routine you begin on a morning when nothing in you feels inspired. It does not feel peaceful at first. It feels exposed. Because avoidance lets you stay vague. It lets you explain without deciding. It lets you feel hurt without taking responsibility for what happens next. But the first honest cut asks something different from you. It asks you to be present while the discomfort is happening, not later in your imagination, not in some perfect future version of the conversation. Right now, with your real voice, your real fear, your real consequences. That is why so many people keep bleeding quietly instead. They choose another day of pretending over 1 hour of truth. They keep answering with "it is fine" when their chest knows it is not. They keep giving access to people who have not handled them with care. They keep breaking promises to themselves because the pain of discipline feels louder than the pain of staying the same. But delay has its own blade. It rubs against you every day. It takes your energy in small amounts until tired becomes your normal state. It takes your dignity when you keep accepting what you know is beneath your standard. It takes your clarity when you spend more time managing confusion than making decisions. It takes emotional space from everything good that tries to enter your life. You may think you are avoiding one painful moment, but often you are spreading that pain across your entire life. You carry it into work, into sleep, into the way you speak to people who did nothing wrong, into the way you look at yourself when the room is quiet. You feel it when you come home tired and realize the problem is still there, sitting in the same place waiting for the same courage you postponed yesterday. And still, you do not need to hate yourself for waiting. You waited because you were scared, because you were tired of being misunderstood, because you did not want to lose someone, because you did not want to discover that changing your life would demand more from you than pain ever did. That fear is real, but so is the cost of obeying it forever. There comes a moment when you understand that clean pain and messy pain are not the same. Clean pain is the honest conversation, the first workout after months of neglect, the deleted distraction, the saved money you wanted to spend because sadness was looking for a purchase, the quiet night where you do not chase drama just to feel wanted. Clean pain stings, but it gives something back. It gives you a straight line inside yourself again. Messy pain spreads. It makes you resent people you never confronted. It makes you angry at a life you keep choosing by not choosing. It makes you look for peace and numbness and then wonder why nothing feels resolved. So maybe the first honest cut is not the punishment. Maybe it is the mercy. Because at least when you face it, the bleeding has a direction. At least the pain belongs to a decision, not to endless delay. At least you can finally stop feeding your wound with silence and start letting the truth close what pretending kept open. And that is the realization that changes a person quietly. Pain faced today may shake your voice. It teaches you to live with blood on your hands and call it patience. Silence feels dangerous when you have been using noise to stay alive. Not real danger. Not the kind that breaks through the door. The kind that waits until the room is still, until the screen goes dark, until there is no one left to answer, impress, distract, please, or explain yourself to. Then suddenly, something inside you starts speaking in a voice you recognize, and that is what you have been avoiding. So you stay busy. You keep the phone close. You open another video before the first feeling finishes rising. You reply to messages you do not care about because an empty moment might ask too much from you. You fill the evening with tasks, errands, background sound, small obligations, anything that keeps you from sitting alone with the truth that has been following you quietly. And the strange part is, it works for a while. Distraction does protect you from discomfort. It gives your mind somewhere to run. It softens the pressure in your chest. It lets you move through the day without touching the thought you are not ready to touch. You can look functional. You can sound fine. You can keep showing up, keep smiling at the right moments, keep telling people you are just tired. But there is a difference between being busy and being free. You know it because the same heaviness returns when the noise stops. It is there when you come home and stand for a moment before turning on the light. It is there when you check your phone even though you are not waiting for anything good. It is there at night when the house settles and your mind starts pulling old receipts from places you thought you had closed. That is the moment silence becomes honest. Not gentle at first, honest. It does not let you keep calling avoidance peace. It does not let you keep pretending that the thing draining you is only stress, only timing, only other people, only a difficult season. Silence removes the audience, and without an audience, the performance loses its purpose. You are left with yourself. That is why solitude can feel like loneliness in the beginning, because you are not used to being with yourself without using someone else's attention to soften the room. You are not used to hearing your own thoughts without editing them for acceptance. You are not used to asking a question and staying long enough for the answer to arrive. But if you do not run, something begins to change. Solitude stops being a punishment. It becomes an accounting. A quiet place where you finally look at what you have been spending, what you have been tolerating, what you have been giving away to keep the surface calm. You begin to notice where your energy goes. You begin to hear the difference between what you want and what you keep accepting. You begin to see that some of your exhaustion is not from hard work, but from the effort of lying to yourself politely. And then the question comes, what am I pretending not to know? Not what do other people think? Not what will they say? Not how can I explain this perfectly so no one misunderstands me? Just that one question, sitting in the middle of your chest with no decoration around it. What am I pretending not to know? Maybe you are pretending not to know that the relationship has been asking you to abandon yourself. Maybe you are pretending not to know that your routine is breaking your own respect in small daily ways. Maybe you are pretending not to know that the peace you protect so carefully is built on silence you resent. And when you finally admit it, the room does not collapse. You do not have to solve your whole life in one night. You do not have to make a dramatic announcement. You do not have to become loud, harsh, or unreachable. You only have to stop betraying the truth the moment you hear it. That is where self-respect begins to return. Quietly, in the decision not to reach for distraction immediately, in the moment you let the uncomfortable thought finish its sentence, in the private promise you keep when no one is watching, in the choice to sit with yourself long enough to understand what your life has been trying to say. Silence is not there to punish you. It is the first room where you stop performing pain and start listening to it. And once you hear yourself clearly, you cannot go back to calling the noise peace. Discipline begins before the damage has a name. It begins in that small, uncomfortable space where you still have a choice. Before the message becomes distance, before the habit becomes identity, before the room becomes a reflection of how long you have been avoiding yourself, before regret finds language and starts explaining your life back to you in a voice you cannot argue with. That is where discipline lives. Not in punishment, not in harshness, not in waking up as someone who suddenly enjoys pain. Discipline is quieter than that. It is the moment you notice the problem while it is still small enough to touch, and you answer it before it grows teeth. You send the message instead of rehearsing it for 3 more days. You take the walk before your body becomes another promise you stop believing. You clean the space, not because a clean room fixes your life, but because disorder has started speaking for you. You return to the work before the unfinished thing becomes another reason to doubt your own word. None of this feels dramatic. That is why it matters. The real changes often look ordinary from the outside. A phone placed face down, a boundary spoken without a speech prepared around it, a purchase you do not make because you finally understand sadness does not need another receipt. An old pattern refused before it becomes another night of explaining why you feel empty. You may still feel tired when you do it. You may still feel afraid. You may still want to choose the easier excuse, the softer delay, the familiar comfort that asks nothing from you today and takes something from you tomorrow. But discipline is not waiting for your feelings to approve the decision. It is protecting your future self from the cost of your current escape. That is the part you begin to understand slowly. Every avoided action becomes emotional debt. Every postponed truth asks to be paid later with anxiety, confusion, resentment, or shame. You think you are saving energy by delaying the hard thing, but often you are only moving the weight into tomorrow, where it weighs heavier than before. And tomorrow you will still be you. You will still have to carry what today refused to face. So maybe discipline is not about becoming harder. Maybe it is about becoming more honest earlier. Earlier with your body, earlier with your money, earlier with your words, earlier with the people who keep taking your silence as permission. Earlier with the part of yourself that knows when you are drifting but keeps hoping nobody will notice. You notice. That is enough to begin. You do not need a perfect plan to interrupt a pattern. You need one clean act before the old story takes control. You need one honest sentence before resentment edits your voice. You need one quiet return to the work before your fear convinces you that you are already too far gone. And when you do it, something small comes back. Not confidence in the loud way people talk about it. Something deeper, a private steadiness. The feeling that you are no longer abandoning yourself at the first sign of discomfort. The feeling that your word can still become real. The feeling that the person you are trying to become is not waiting somewhere far away, but being built in the exact moment you choose responsibility over relief. That is where self-respect begins to rebuild. In private. In repetition. In the small actions no one praises because no one saw how close you were to avoiding them. You stop making promises to your future self and start giving that person evidence. Evidence that you can return. Evidence that you can choose the harder truth. before the easier excuse. Evidence that pain does not have to become regret when it is answered early enough. And one day, you realize discipline was never the enemy of your peace. It was the hand that reached into the future and removed a regret before it had the chance to form. There is a version of your life that keeps waiting until pain becomes loud enough to obey. It waits until the relationship has already damaged your peace, until the habit has already taken months from your body, until the silence has already turned into resentment, until the small discomfort you could have answered with one honest act becomes a season you now have to recover from. You know that life because you have lived pieces of it. You have felt the cost of delaying what your body already knew. You have watched yourself choose the easier sentence, the softer excuse, the safer silence. You have told yourself you were staying calm when really you were staying afraid. You have called it patience when it was just another way to avoid the moment where you would have to stand behind your own truth. And still, this is not a reason to hate yourself. You were trying to stay safe. You were trying not to lose anyone. You were trying not to start a conflict you did not have the strength to finish. You were trying to make it through the day without adding one more emotional weight to your chest. But there is another life. Not a perfect life. Not a painless one. A life where you stop waiting for discomfort to become a disaster before you respond. A life where you answer the soft warning early. Where you notice the tightness in your chest and do not bury it under noise. Where you send the message before distance becomes pride. Where you take care of your body before shame has to drag you back. Where you choose the honest boundary before resentment starts speaking for you. That life does not ask you to chase pain. It does not ask you to romanticize suffering, become cold, or treat every hard emotion like a battle to win. You are not here to become a stone. You are here to stop handing permanent decisions to temporary fear. That is the difference. Pain is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is information. Sometimes it is the first quiet signal that something in your life needs your attention before it becomes your regret. The problem is not that you feel discomfort. The problem begins when you keep letting discomfort make decisions from the shadows. Because fear is convincing in the moment. It says, stay quiet. It says, not today. It says they will misunderstand. It says, you are not ready. It says one more delay will not matter. And for a moment, fear sounds reasonable because it knows how tired you are. But your future self also has a voice. It does not shout. It waits behind every choice you make today. It watches whether you protect it or postpone it. It watches whether you keep spending tomorrow's peace to buy tonight's comfort. It watches whether you keep leaving the hard truth for a later version of yourself, who will be just as human, just as afraid, and carrying even more weight. So become the person who answers pain while it is still calling softly. Not perfectly, not loudly, quietly. Answer it when the room is messy and your mind wants to drift. Answer it when the habit starts whispering for one more exception. Answer it when your silence begins to feel less like peace and more like disappearance. Answer it when your own standards ask you to stop negotiating with what keeps making you smaller. This is how self-respect returns. It does not return through one dramatic decision that fixes everything. It returns when you stop abandoning yourself in small private moments. It returns when you choose the harder truth before the easier excuse. It returns when you can look back at your day and know you did not let fear quietly run your life. You will still face hardship. You will still feel doubt. You will still have nights where the old pattern feels easier than the new choice. But you will not be bleeding from self-betrayal in the same way. And one day, your future self will stand inside a life that feels calmer, clearer, and less crowded with unfinished pain. Not because everything was easy, but because somewhere back here, in this quiet moment, you finally started protecting them. You answered before regret learned your name. If this video felt uncomfortably familiar, do not rush away from that feeling. Let it tell you something. Maybe there is one conversation, one habit, one routine, or one quiet truth that has been asking for your attention longer than you wanted to admit. If this message helped you see yourself more clearly, like the video so it can reach someone else who is silently carrying the same weight. Comment one word. Honesty, if you are ready to stop mistaking delay for peace. And subscribe if this is the kind of work you are doing now. Rebuilding in private, choosing discipline without drama, and learning to answer your own life before regret speaks louder. Watch the next video on this channel when you are ready to go deeper, because the person you are becoming will need more than motivation. They will need truth, silence, and repeated courage.